This is the Penn State Wrestling Show. Great day to be a Nittany Lions wrestling fan. Although, is there a bad day? Because this is a team that, wins national championships in a row and then does things like having the number one class in recruiting, which is not a surprise given their success and what we know and what Greg Pickle has been providing for you at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. So that's what we're talking about today, among some other topics. Greg, welcome to the show. Busy week, really, when you look back at kind of the accumulation and the culmination of some of these things. So where do you want to start, kind of your high level thoughts to start the show today?
Yeah, the Penn State wrestling offseason rolls on with some success for the Nittany Lions at the World Team Trials. Not a real surprise there, but some guys did maybe perform a little bit better than I would have expected them to, en route to earning a spot at Final X. So we'll get into that. We'll talk about the class of 2025. MatScouts published its final class of 2025 rankings, and so we'll have an update on that, and we'll close things out with a look at what's ahead for Penn State here during the rest of the offseason.
All right, so let's just dive right into it. Let's talk about the number one class and the wrestlers that made that happen. So take us through the class and what we know about them.
Yeah, so Penn State obviously recruited very well in the class of 2025. I should note that that's going to lead to what I believe will be a pretty small class of 2026 for the Nittany Lions. So they went back-to-back in MatScouts class rankings in terms of having the number one class 2 years in a row. That's not going to happen in 2026. And it's not just because David Taylor and Oklahoma State are on a wildly successful run in the class of 2026. It's also because Penn State's only going to have two guys, and maybe three, maybe four, but it's not going to be a big class because this year's one was pretty sizable. So PJ Duke and Marcus Blaze are obviously the two headliners, number one, number two in the country in MatScouts' final big board. And then it has William Henckel, who is number 18, Asher Cunningham, number 22, Nate Desmond, number 39, Dalton Perry, number 54. Blaze and Duke, clearly the headliners. PJ Duke going to Final X, which again we'll talk about here in a little bit. Marcus Blaze has won just about everything somebody can win at the high school level, and has the opportunity to compete in some younger age group world stuff later this year if he is so inclined to do so. And so those guys are awesome, and they're going to come in here. It's crazy to me, T. Frank, that PJ Duke, who again, like his new teammate, it's one of the number one recruits in the country, has won everything there is to win at the high school level. PJ Duke is going to the Senior World Team Trials to Final X rather, after winning at the Senior World Team Trials. He's going to Final X to take on Yanni Diakomahalis for a spot at the 70 kilogram Team USA at the Olympic level. And there might not be a spot for him in the Penn State wrestling lineup this year. In fact, it's hard to see where he would fit into it, but it is just fascinating to me.
Yeah.
But that's just where Penn State is. So he's at 70 kilograms, which is 154 pounds. Obviously, Penn State returns Tyler Kasak at 157. And so, it has Shane Van Ness, of course, at 149. So I don't know where he would, fit into the lineup. Maybe he forces his way in. Who knows? We'll have to wait and see. But, he leads the way, and Blaze obviously is a guy who many think can take over potentially for Bo Bartlett at 141. You have Ono coming as well. And keep in mind, Ono, one of the world's best wrestlers from Japan, who is coming to Penn State, not a part of these rankings. And neither is Rocco Welch, the transfer Penn State brings in at 184 pounds. So this is just high school guys, but another tremendous recruiting job by Cael Sanderson and his staff. As we mentioned before, I can't imagine it's the world's hardest sales pitch. Maybe it's a little bit more challenging now with David Taylor and the Oklahoma State contingent, and obviously Iowa still gets some guys, Ohio State still gets some guys, but all told, another successful recruiting cycle for Penn State. They end up number one class in the country.
Yeah, is there any more nuance or context? You mentioned how these guys fit into the kind of the picture of where they might line up for Penn State on the roster. Kind of in that 2-year look you mentioned of that 2-year run of having the number one class. Are there areas where you think there's overlap? Are there areas where you think that's going to create great competition? And how would you rank, these guys as opposed to, the last year's group in terms of impact? Be hard to find, is there a Luke Lillidahl? Do you think the impact level of that for maybe Marcus Blaze, as you mentioned?
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. Can Marcus Blaze, or again, PJ Duke, if he wins a spot, can one of those guys be a Luke Lillidahl and be a point scorer and wrestle at a high level as a freshman? We'll have to wait and see. I think the rest of the class is almost certainly going to redshirt the first year on campus, which I don't think it's going to be a surprise to any of them. So we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, Penn State is in a really good position right now to, if those guys, again, win a job, great. And, Blaze, I think of the two is more likely to do that, but who knows? Like we said, PJ Duke is so well accomplished, so good at wrestling. He may take someone's job. We'll have to wait and see. But
yeah,
all told, I think this class does nice from a couple perspectives. One being depth. You've replenished your depth. You lost some guys that maybe a lot of Penn State fans have never heard of, or they just see the name on the roster. Very important part of the team, both in the practice room and as training partners when it gets to the postseason. So Penn State replenishes some depth there. The one spot I think that they're going to have to look at here potentially in the next cycle could be heavyweight. We'll have to wait and see.
I was just about to ask you about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't think they have a ton of needs to fill in the next cycle, but I do think heavyweight depth is one spot. Obviously, the problem is Cole Mirasola has a lot of years left to wrestle. So I don't know if you're going to be able to convince the top guys to come to Penn State to potentially sit behind him for a few years, but we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, ultimately, I don't think Penn State has an enormous amount of needs to fill in the next cycle. And obviously the portal is an opportunity to fill them when you didn't know if you were going to have them, potentially. So we'll have to wait and see how that shakes out. But, they have Jaden James committed. He is MatScouts number 3, class of 2026 recruit. So he is a guy that factors into the middle, upper weights, I think, by the time he gets here, reigning 150-pound New Jersey State champ as a junior. So we'll see. He keeps moving up. Like I talked to his coach, and every year he just seems to go up weight class, so he's still got some growing to do. But all told, not a ton of needs to fill for Penn State after landing the back-to-back number 1 recruiting classes in the country per MatScouts.
And you already mentioned the World Team Trials, and you mentioned Final X. So where are we in that timeline? And can you give us a recap what happened at the World Team Trials for Penn State?
Yeah, so we're set for Final X, which again, if you're not totally familiar with it, which I think if you're listening to this podcast in May, you definitely know what it is. But if you're new, welcome. And Final X is the best of 3 event. It'll have 10 weight classes between men's and women's freestyle to set Team USA for the World Championships later this year. If you listened to the show last week, you knew that Penn State going into this was already going to be represented by Luke Lillidahl, who's going to face Spencer Lee for the 57-kilogram spot on the world team. Mitchell Metzenbrink already earned his spot the last time Penn State was at the Penn State was at the U.S. Open. He earned the 74-kilogram title. He's now going to face former Iowa State wrestler David Carr for that spot on the U.S. World Team. And then Penn State is sending a few more connections. PJ Duke, as we mentioned, is going to face Yanni for the 70-kilogram spot before he even gets to Penn State as a freshman, which is just mind-blowing to me. Levi Haynes won a World Team Trials title. He'll take on Evan Wick in the 79-kilogram world team spot for the world team. Kyle Dake and NLWC and Kyle Snyder NLWC at 86 and 97 kilograms respectively have their matches set to try and earn a world team spot. And then Josh Barr, the Penn State redshirt freshman who performed very well in his first year as a starter, is going to take on Trent Hidley, Pennsylvania guy, obviously, who is tremendously successful. And so he's going to take him on for the 92 kilogram spot. So I threw a lot at you. All told, though, it's going to be really fun to watch these matchups, T. Frank. There are a lot of good matchups coming to Newark, New Jersey, in the Prudential Center on June 14th.
So I guess the next thing is, what's next? Is it the Final X, or are there other things that are going to be happening before then? And what's the timeline for Penn State fans to know, where we are in this particular offseason?
Yeah, so U23 Nationals and the U20 Team Trials are next week in Ohio. So it's a little too early to know who's going to be there. Like Jaden James, I mentioned a minute ago, already has a U17 world team spot. He could certainly try and wrestle up and earn a U20 world team spot. I don't know what Penn State's representation will look like at U23 Nationals. It's a little too early to say, but that's sort of the next offseason milestone. And then you have Final X in mid-June, and then things quiet down a good bit for the summer in terms of the freestyle competitions. There's still some stuff going on, but it's not as kind of back to back to back, or at least every other week it seems like it is now. So things will quiet down a bit. Obviously, school's going on for the guys that are NLWC members still attending Penn State, so that stuff will be going on, and we'll start waiting for schedule news and see how things shake out from there. But yeah, we're coming down the home stretch of the busy portion of the Penn State wrestling offseason, T. Frank. It's going to slow down, not for another about month and a half, but then once it does, it'll be pretty quiet until the fall.
Yeah, and we'll let you go and have, I don't know, a barbecue for the 4th of July or something after covering this since, really since last year at this time,
Right.
when we were going full steam ahead with the show in the off season. But during the all the work you did during the off season and during the regular season, during October, November, December, etc. So, any final thoughts as we get out of here on the show? And again, if you're watching this and you're watching to the end, not as long of a show as last week, but still a lot of great information from Greg. And if you want to reward him for that, make sure you go to bluewhiteillustrated.com and you check out his wrestling coverage there. And if you're enjoying the show, make sure you subscribe here on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel or wherever you are getting your podcasts. Leave a 5-star review, and that is always appreciated. Help us grow the show. So any final thoughts here, Greg?
Yeah, one thing I forgot to mention is that the class of 2027 will come into full focus for coaches in, I forget the date, in June, but we're not too far away from it as well. It'll be the first time they're allowed to make phone contact with those guys, juniors to be, current sophomores, who will be part of the class of 2027. So we'll be tracking that too over at bluewhiteillustrated.com, who Penn State's in touch with, things like that. So stay tuned for that. And otherwise, the freestyle updates will keep rolling as they come in. And we'll just see where things go from here. Again, it's an interesting time of the offseason because there's some stuff going on, but we're definitely winding down. The wrestling season just kind of keeps going, it seems like, but there does come a time when it stops, and we're getting a little closer to that with each passing day, but it's not quiet for long, so make sure you check back here often. You and I will have to sit down and figure out a show schedule once things wrap up in the Final X, but we'll keep you all posted on that, and don't forget, football season's right around the corner. If you like basketball, that's right, a little bit further away like wrestling is, but plenty of recruiting stuff for you football fanatics as well. So check it out over at bluewhiteillustrated.com.
Yep, and we'll be back next time here on the Penn State Wrestling Show to talk more about all that.